Hi, I'm Superintendent of Public Instruction Chris Rakedahl. I am very honored to serve as our state's Chief School Officer. And I think one of the reasons I serve in the role and one of the responsibilities I have is to speak about education, even when it doesn't fit conveniently in a classroom. Yesterday, what we saw in our nation's capital was sad, it was tragic, it cost lives, and it was rooted in a lot of hate and a lot of fear. And those of us in positions of responsibility have to speak very candidly about that. I'm speaking to you as a former history teacher, as somebody who believes deeply in the institutions of government to provide essential supports and services for our communities, and of course as a parent of two kids of my own. What we observed yesterday was never seen before in our country. Not even through the Civil War did we see an attack on our nation's capital. What we saw yesterday was wrong. It was violent. It spoke to a belief that an individual should be worshiped. And we are fundamentally grounded on a belief that we are a nation of laws, not of men. Those folks yesterday broke the law, both in our nation's capital and here in Olympia, in our state capital, as similarly thinking protesters turned into violent mobs who broke through a fence and threatened the family of our governor. Our students are watching. They've been watching for the last 4 years. They've been watching their entire lives. They are exposed to media through their phones, through other platforms at unprecedented speed. There is no more adult conversation when it comes to this stuff. It is in front of our children all the time. So I want to encourage you to talk to kids as parents, as teachers. Be candid, be honest, be fair. But we have to expose the conversation. We have to have that civil and civic discourse that allows us to explore what happened and why did it happen. I want to share some thoughts with you that are hard, and I think you should take to heart and consider in your conversations. Nothing about this is partisan. This isn't about Democrats or Republicans. It's about our country. It's about our democracy. It's about our republic. The idea that we elect people to make hard choices and we honor our elections. And we don't always agree with the outcome. This country, a country I'm proud to be a part of as an American, was founded on racist principles. We were founded upon the concept that only people of white male privilege had all of the access. And we fought like heck for the last 230 years to constantly battle for greater justice. And as you've heard many times before, the arc of justice always favors those who seek truth, those who are trying to create better opportunity for everybody. That's what elections are about. That's what it's about for your local school board. That's what it's about for the presidency. Our revolution in this country was about people who believed they needed to self-govern. They were fighting for the right to elect their leadership. And while our foundation was by far less than perfect, the fundamental principle of representation holds up. And what we saw yesterday were people in our nation's capital, in our state capitals around the country, fundamentally hating their democracy. What we saw in our nation's capital went way beyond just the violation of the fundamental principle of the republic. It exacerbated and demonstrated pure racism. On that Capitol campus was the Confederate flag, a symbol of racism and anti-black, a symbol of the Confederacy, a group of people who wanted to rip our country in half. That flag means something. It is painful. It is full of hurt. It is full of hate for too many people. And it doesn't belong. You have a right to demonstrate it. You have a responsibility to do better by your fellow American citizens. What we saw on that lawn was a noose in our nation's capital, a long-standing symbol of hate and murder, particularly for our African American brothers and sisters. Please, I'm asking you all to speak specifically to this, to denounce that, to investigate it, but to never believe for a second this is just about fixing law enforcement at the nation's capital. This is also about what's in the hearts and minds of people stoked on by leaders. I'm asking every legislator, Democrat and Republican in the state of Washington, to denounce the violence in DC and to denounce the violence that occurred and the significant threat of armed individuals at our governor's mansion yesterday. We all have to take a leadership role here. We all have to speak to those who are listening to us. We are elected to lead and to make hard decisions with our words. Right now is a time for civil discourse, not a time just for civics, understanding how government works and why we need to honor the republic, but also of civility. How do we talk to each other in a way that allows us to hear each other's perspective, even when we disagree, and move forward together? To do that, though, we have to honor the fact that many people in the United States of America continue to be oppressed by systems of institutional racism. It hurt yesterday to see symbols of hate. When we know darn well if that were a Black Lives Matter protest or one of dozens of other protests that happen on the National Mall that attempt to move to Congress to have their voices heard, that would have been put down in a very different way. That is the definition of institutional racism. And the implicit bias that was presumed because virtually all of them are white, because virtually all of them pledge allegiance and claim they are honorable Americans, because they claim that they are patriots who believe in the Constitution. They have established a rhetoric that gives them privilege. But yesterday, it was a violent mob that threatened the lives of every member of the United States House and Senate, the people we elect, from both sides of the political aisle. There was a lot of hurt embedded in that yesterday, but it wasn't new to the nation. That's the lesson here. We make 2 steps forward, and sadly, we take steps backwards. And yesterday was the darkest day of civil discourse at our nation's capital and in our state capital, where hundreds of protesters broke through a fence and intimidated and attempted to threaten the life of our governor. It was illegal, and it needs to be called out. I am asking every member of our delegation, Democrats and Republicans in our federal delegation, to denounce those actions, to speak specifically to who incited those actions, the President of the United States and his allies, using words of violence and an expectation that they would march on the Capitol, to use force, to use might, to use strength. These were the words that were used. I'm calling on every Democrat and Republican in the Washington state legislature to be public in denouncing the actions of protesters here in our state capitol that attempted to intimidate and potentially threaten the life of our governor and other elected officials. We all have a role to play. In our republic, elected officials have to take risks that are not always popular, but are the things we must say to honor the republic, to put the institutions and the history of our democracy ahead of our own personal views. This is a moment for that. Parents, be candid with your families. I've had tough conversations with my own, and I know you are. But find that balance between the civics, the government that we have, of the people, by the people, and for the people, with the civility. The civility to me is the responsibility that goes along with rights. We have a right to free speech. We have a responsibility to respect each other. For every right, there are multiple responsibilities, and that is a powerful lesson right now. And please talk to your kids about what you saw in the symbols of hate and racism. This country, unfortunately, was founded upon them. We are an amazing nation that is seeking to become a more perfect union. But let's be candid and be honest about that and hold our leaders accountable when they violate the very principles of our republic. Have these conversations with your students, with your families. Teachers, be candid, be honest, be fair. This isn't about partisanship. It isn't about Democrats and Republicans. It's about the republic. It's about helping our young people put context around what they saw, knowing we've been through violent times in our past, including the assassination of civil rights leaders, the assassination of presidents, the darkest of our hours, and we came through it because we came together and we respected the institutions of government to deliver on the promise of hope. Talk to your young people about that. Put this in context, but help them understand that we've been through dark times, and by coming together, we get to better times. I'm going to have that conversation again with my kids. I hope you will too. Yesterday was a tough moment for the nation. The president needs to be held personally accountable, removed from office. Each of us has a responsibility now to talk about all of this in context, to help our young people understand what happened, why it happened, listen to them about their perspectives, and talk about strategies we might have in our republic, from our city governments to our state government to our federal government. What strategies do we have to have meaningful discourse, to get our values put out and still respect each other peacefully? That's our challenge now. That's my challenge for all of our elected officials. And I hope you will be a part of a better civil discourse in the state of Washington from this moment forward. Thank you.